A steel vault that had not been opened in 20 years was supposed to hold the one document that could settle everything: Richard Blackwood's final will. Instead, when Ethan Blackwood pulled open drawer 17, he found it completely empty, except for a single playing card, the Queen of Hearts, with 6 words written across the back that would haunt this family long after the vault door closed again. The answer was never locked here. Within minutes, they would discover the security footage had been tampered with, a memory card removed, and nothing else, as though someone wanted them to know they were being watched. And buried inside the entry log, a single unidentified visitor, logged only as family, who entered the vault at 3:14 in the morning and, according to every record, never left. By the end of this chapter, the Blackwood family's own housekeeper, a woman who had served them faithfully for over 20 years, will be found repeating one sentence, over and over, unable to stop. Don't let Ethan open the second will, because it isn't his father's. What she knows, and why she's been too afraid to say it until now, is where this story goes next. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. At the center of this chapter are the people who thought they already understood their own family's history. Ethan Blackwood, standing in the vault his father built, holding nothing but a playing card where a legal document should have been. Detective Laura Bennett and Detective Michael Ross, called in not to investigate a crime, but to explain an absence, evidence that had been removed with surgical precision and no trace of forced entry. And Margaret, the family's longtime housekeeper, the only person in that house who had been awake at the exact hour someone entered the vault and vanished without ever leaving. 3 questions now sit at the center of everything. Who left the Queen of Hearts behind, and why choose a message instead of simply taking something? Who was inside that vault at 3:14 in the morning, logged only as family, with no name attached, and no recorded exit? And most urgently, what does Margaret know about a second will, one she insists was never written by Richard Blackwood at all? To understand how deep this secret ran, you have to understand who Ethan Blackwood was before any of this began. He had inherited a modest family business from his father, Richard Blackwood, and within 30 years, turned it into an empire worth billions. Colleagues described him as brilliant but guarded, a man who trusted numbers more than people, and people only after they had earned it. Friends were few. Loyalty was everything. And the one thing Ethan valued above his own success was the idea of family, the one thing his father had always told him mattered more than any amount of money ever could. Sophia entered his life during a business dinner neither of them had wanted to attend, and within a year, they were married in a ceremony small enough to keep out of the press entirely, which was exactly how Ethan preferred it. What few people realized was that Sophia had built her own fortune years before they met, and the marriage was less about one person entering another's wealth, and more about 2 equally guarded people finally finding someone who didn't need an explanation for their privacy. When Sophia became pregnant, Ethan reportedly told a close friend that for the first time in his adult life, he felt like he had something worth protecting more than the company his father built. Then there was Daniel, Ethan's younger brother by 6 years, a man who had spent much of his life in Ethan's shadow, both admired and quietly resentful of it. Daniel worked within the family company, but never held the same authority Ethan did, and those close to the family noted a tension between the brothers that rarely surfaced but never fully disappeared either. Still, on the surface, Daniel showed up when it mattered, and no one in the family seriously doubted his loyalty, not yet. And finally, there was Margaret, the housekeeper who had served the Blackwood household for over 20 years, since before Ethan had even taken over the company. She was the kind of presence most wealthy households have and rarely notice, always in the background, always trusted completely. What no one in the family realized was that Margaret had been carrying a secret since the night Richard Blackwood signed his final will, a secret she had promised never to reveal, no matter what it cost her. 3 days before his daughter was born, Ethan received a message that would quietly set everything in motion, though he had no way of knowing that at the time. It arrived on his private phone, from a number he didn't recognize, a single line of text with no name attached. Your wife's child is not yours. Ask the hospital for proof before you sign anything. He told himself it was nothing, some rival trying to rattle him before the biggest week of his life. But the thought lodged itself somewhere he couldn't shake it loose from. And that night, he made a quiet call to the hospital's genetics department, requesting a paternity test be run the moment the baby arrived, telling no one, not even Sophia, that he had done it. He told himself it was simply due diligence, the kind any careful man would take. He didn't yet understand that the message itself had been the first move in something far larger than a lie about a child. On the surface, the Blackwood family looked like exactly what people assumed wealthy families to be: composed, private, untouchable. But that image was about to collapse the moment a steel vault that hadn't been opened in 20 years revealed nothing but a single playing card, and a warning no one in that family was prepared to hear. Welcome back to the Blackwood family story. If you're just joining us, a quick reminder of where we left off. Ethan Blackwood discovered his newborn daughter's DNA test said he wasn't her father, only to learn the report itself had been secretly altered before it ever reached him. Behind that lie was something far larger, a stranger who had been quietly appearing in the family's own photographs for over 20 years, and a housekeeper named Margaret who had been carrying a secret since the night Ethan's father signed his final will. In today's chapter, that secret gets closer to the surface than ever before. Inside a vault that hadn't been opened in 20 years, the family searches for answers, and instead finds something far stranger than an empty drawer. If you haven't watched the earlier chapters yet, we'd recommend going back before continuing, since what happens next builds directly on everything that's already been uncovered. If you're already caught up, thank you for staying with this family story. Let's continue exactly where we left off. The mansion's security alarm screamed. A guard burst into the library, breathless. "Mr. Blackwood, what is it?" "The vault." "What about it?" "It's open." Ethan's face went pale. "What was inside?" The guard swallowed hard. "Your father's original will is gone. No broken locks. No shattered windows. No signs of forced entry. Whoever had taken it already knew exactly where it was hidden. And more terrifying still, they had been inside the mansion while everyone else was searching the library. The library fell silent. No one spoke. No one even looked at each other. Ethan slowly stood from his father's desk. My father's original will was locked inside the family vault. He looked directly at the head of security. "Who has access?" The guard answered immediately. "Only 3 people. You, your attorney, and..." The guard hesitated. "And who?" Ethan demanded. "Your late father." Daniel frowned. "That's impossible. Our father has been dead for 23 years. The guard nodded. "I know, sir. But according to the security system, the vault was opened using Mr. Richard Blackwood's biometric profile." The room froze. Detective Laura Bennett slowly stepped forward. "Explain." The guard swallowed. "The fingerprint scanner accepted Richard Blackwood's fingerprint." Daniel laughed nervously. "So now we're supposed to believe a dead man opened the vault?" "No," Laura replied calmly. "I'm beginning to believe someone wants us to." Within minutes, everyone gathered inside the underground vault beneath the mansion. The thick steel door stood open. Nothing appeared disturbed. Rows of safety deposit drawers lined the walls. The air smelled cold and metallic. Ethan walked directly to drawer 17, the drawer that had belonged to his father. It was empty, except for a single playing card, the Queen of Hearts. Sophia stared at it. Why would someone leave this? Detective Ross carefully picked it up using gloves. There must be a reason. Laura turned the card over. Written across the back, in elegant handwriting, were 6 words. The answer was never locked here. Ethan closed his eyes. They wanted us to find this. Laura nodded. This wasn't theft. It was a message. Just then, Daniel noticed something unusual. Wait. He pointed toward the vault's security camera. The light isn't blinking. Ross climbed onto a chair. He examined it. The camera has no memory card. When was it removed? The guard checked the maintenance log. It wasn't. It should still be inside. Ross looked puzzled. So someone removed only the memory card and left the camera. Sophia whispered. Because they wanted us to know we were being watched. A cold silence followed. Detective Laura requested every security log from the previous month. The head of security connected his laptop. Hundreds of entries appeared. Employees, deliveries, maintenance workers, gardeners. Then, one entry caught Laura's attention. Visitor authorized. No name, no photograph, no identification number. Only one word. Family. Laura frowned. Who entered using this code? The guard looked confused. There isn't supposed to be a code called family. Ross enlarged the record. Entry time, 3:14 a.m. Exit time, no recorded exit. Daniel stared at the screen. What does that mean? Ross looked up slowly. It means whoever entered was never recorded leaving. Sophia suddenly remembered something. 3:14. Ethan looked at her. What? The anonymous caller. She told me something before hanging up. I couldn't understand it then. But now I do. Everyone waited. Sophia closed her eyes. She said, at 3:14, everyone in the house was asleep except the one who never sleeps. Silence. Detective Laura looked around the room. Is there anyone who stays awake all night? The head of security answered first. The night guard. Ethan shook his head. He retired last year. No. The housekeeper's assistant interrupted quietly. There was someone else. Everyone turned. She looked frightened. Margaret, the missing housekeeper. She used to walk through the mansion every night. She said old houses talk after midnight. Daniel sighed. Margaret believed in ghost stories. The young assistant slowly shook her head. No, sir. She wasn't listening for ghosts. She was listening. Her voice trembled. For footsteps. At that exact moment, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Glass shattered. Everyone instinctively looked toward the ceiling. One of the security guards spoke into his radio. Report. Static. Nothing else. Then, a terrified voice finally answered. Sir, we found Margaret. Ethan's heart pounded. Is she alive? A long pause. Then came the reply that sent chills through everyone in the vault. Yes. But she keeps saying the same sentence over and over. What sentence? The guard's voice cracked. Don't let Ethan open the second will. Because it isn't his father's. The words echoed through the underground vault. Don't let Ethan open the second will. Because it isn't his father's. For several seconds, no one moved. Detective Laura Bennett looked at Ethan. What did she mean by that? Ethan slowly shook his head. I don't know. But we're finding her. Margaret was sitting alone in the mansion's east sitting room. She hadn't tried to run. She hadn't asked for help. She simply stared at the fireplace. The 80-year-old housekeeper looked exhausted. Her gray hair was untidy. Her hands trembled. Yet the moment Ethan entered the room, she smiled sadly. I always hoped. You'd never have to know. Ethan knelt beside her. Margaret, look at me. She slowly lifted her eyes. Tears filled them instantly. I failed your father. Ethan's heart sank. You knew my father was hiding something. Margaret nodded. For years. Then why didn't you tell me? She looked toward the window. Because he made me promise. Detective Laura switched on a voice recorder. I need you to tell us everything. Margaret took a deep breath. It started 24 years ago. The night before Mr. Richard Blackwood signed his final will. Everyone remained silent. He asked me to prepare the library. He said an old friend was coming. What friend? Ethan asked. Margaret closed her eyes. I never learned his name. But I remembered his face. She pointed toward the altered family portrait. The man in the photographs. A cold silence settled over the room. He arrived just after sunset. The two men stayed inside the library for nearly 3 hours. They argued. They shouted. Then, Margaret's voice cracked. I heard Mr. Richard say something I'll never forget. Everyone leaned closer. He said, if you steal my family, you'll never steal the truth. Daniel frowned. So the stranger knew Dad? Margaret nodded. They knew each other very well. What happened after that? He left, and Mr. Richard burned something in the fireplace. Ethan immediately looked at Detective Ross. The fireplace. Ross understood instantly. Minutes later, the investigators were back inside Richard Blackwood's library. Ross removed the iron grate from the fireplace. Most of the ashes had long since disappeared, but hidden beneath loose bricks. His flashlight reflected against something metallic. I've got something. He carefully reached inside. A small brass cylinder, barely larger than a fountain pen. Its ends were sealed with wax. Laura examined it. It's a document capsule. Ethan carefully broke the old wax seal. Inside was a tightly rolled piece of paper. Not a will. A map. Hand-drawn. The map showed the entire Blackwood estate. One location had been circled in red. The old greenhouse. Daniel looked confused. We demolished the greenhouse 15 years ago. Margaret slowly shook her head. No, you demolished the building. Not what was underneath it. Every eye turned toward her. What do you mean? There was a cellar. No one knew about it. Except. She stopped speaking. Except who? Margaret looked directly at Ethan. Your father. And the man in the photographs. Within half an hour, flashlights swept across the abandoned gardens. The greenhouse had indeed been demolished years earlier. Only broken stone foundations remained. Detective Ross compared the map with the ruins. The entrance should be here. One of the security guards struck the ground with a steel rod. Instead of solid earth, a hollow sound echoed back. Everyone looked at one another. They quickly cleared away decades of weeds and soil. Beneath the overgrown grass, an old iron hatch slowly emerged. Its surface was covered in rust. Across the center, someone had carved 3 initials. RB. Ethan ran his fingers over the metal. My father. Ross pulled hard on the handle. It wouldn't move. Another guard joined him. Still nothing. Finally, all 4 security guards pulled together. The rusted hatch groaned. Then, it slowly opened. A rush of stale air escaped from the darkness below. Laura shined her flashlight into the opening. Stone steps disappeared deep underground. At the bottom, a single wooden door stood slightly open, as if someone had entered. Not long ago. Then Ethan noticed something that made his blood run cold. Fresh muddy footprints. Leading down. None. Coming back up. Without saying a word, he picked up a flashlight and began descending into the darkness. The stone staircase seemed endless. Each step echoed through the darkness. Ethan led the way. Detective Laura Bennett stayed close behind him, her flashlight cutting through the dust-filled air. Daniel followed in silence. No one spoke. The only sound was their footsteps and the slow dripping of water somewhere below. The muddy footprints continued down the stairs. Fresh. Whoever had made them couldn't have been there more than a few hours earlier. Finally, the staircase ended. The old wooden door stood slightly open. Ethan reached for the handle. Detective Laura stopped him. Wait. She crouched beside the doorway. The footprints stop here. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? They don't come back. A chill swept through the group. Someone had entered the cellar, but no one had left. Laura slowly pushed the door open. It creaked loudly. The room beyond was much larger than anyone expected. Shelves lined every wall. Old filing cabinets. Dust-covered furniture. Broken clocks. Stacks of leather-bound journals. It looked less like a cellar, and more like a forgotten archive. In the center of the room, a single desk sat beneath a hanging light. The bulb was glowing. Daniel whispered, "That's impossible. There hasn't been electricity down here for years." Detective Ross examined the wire. It isn't connected. Everyone looked at the glowing bulb. No one could explain it. Then Ethan noticed something on the desk. A tape recorder. Its red recording light was blinking. Still recording. He slowly pressed the stop button. The room became silent. Beside the recorder lay a sealed envelope. Across the front, in familiar handwriting. For Ethan. His heart pounded. My father's handwriting. He carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Ethan, if you found this room, then everything has happened exactly as I feared. You probably believe someone is trying to destroy our family. You're wrong. Someone has spent decades trying to rewrite it. If I'm gone, don't trust photographs. Don't trust documents. Don't even trust your own memories. Because memories can be replaced. But guilt never can. The letter ended there. Nothing more. Daniel looked confused. What does he mean by rewritten? No one answered. Because no one knew. Then, Detective Ross opened one of the filing cabinets. Inside were dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled with a date. The earliest, 26 years ago. The latest, 3 days ago. Ross picked up the newest tape. Someone's been here recently. Laura inserted it into the tape recorder. She pressed play. Static filled the room. Then, a man's voice. Calm. Measured. I don't know how much longer I can keep this hidden. Everyone recognized it immediately. Richard Blackwood. Ethan's father. I've spent 23 years protecting my sons from the truth. Daniel looked at Ethan. Our father made these recordings before he died. The recording continued. If you're hearing this, it means I failed. Long silence. Then Richard whispered words that made Ethan's blood run cold. Ethan isn't the one in danger. Another pause. Daniel is. Daniel stared at the recorder. What? Richard continued. Someone has convinced Ethan that he must protect the family. But the family they're protecting isn't the one they were born into. The tape suddenly clicked. It ended. No explanation. No names. Nothing. Silence filled the cellar. Then, a loud metallic bang echoed above them. Everyone looked toward the staircase. The heavy iron hatch slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the staircase. One of the guards ran upward. He pushed against the hatch. It wouldn't move. It's locked. Ethan rushed up the steps. He shoved with all his strength. Nothing. Someone had locked them inside. Then, a voice echoed through the darkness from the other side of the hatch. Calm. Familiar. And unmistakably close. You're finally asking the right questions. No one could identify whether the voice belonged to a man or a woman. It continued. But you're still searching for the wrong person. Then came one final sentence. A sentence that made Ethan slowly turn toward his own brother. Asked Daniel where he was. Exactly 23 years ago tonight. The voice faded. Silence returned. No one inside the cellar moved. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the people trapped beneath the estate. Ethan slowly turned toward Daniel. The flashlight in his hand trembled. What happened? 23 years ago? Daniel looked genuinely confused. I don't know. You do. I don't. You hesitated. Daniel's voice grew louder. Because you're accusing me based on the voice of someone hiding behind a locked door. Detective Laura stepped between the brothers. Enough. This is exactly what whoever planned this wants. They want you turning against each other. Ethan lowered his flashlight. She was right. Every clue had pointed at someone, only to point somewhere else moments later. The DNA report. The photographs. The missing will. Margaret. The cellar. Everything had one thing in common. Someone had carefully controlled what they discovered. And when they discovered it, Detective Ross examined the iron hatch. It wasn't locked mechanically. He pointed toward a small electronic device bolted beside the frame. It was locked remotely. Laura frowned. Which means, someone has been watching us. Ross nodded. Every step, every conversation, every discovery. The realization sent chills through the room. They hadn't been investigating the mystery. They had been following someone else's plan. One of the security guards called from the back of the cellar. Sir, I found another room, hidden behind a wall of filing cabinets. A narrow passageway stretched into darkness. The group followed carefully. The tunnel ended inside a surprisingly modern office. Unlike the dusty archive, this room looked recently used. A fresh cup of coffee sat on the desk, still warm. Laura touched the mug. They were here. Only minutes ago. Ethan's eyes swept across the room. There was a laptop, a printer, several file boxes, and a large corkboard mounted on the wall. The moment he saw it, he stopped breathing. The board was covered with photographs. Not just of him, of everyone. Sophia, Daniel, Margaret, the detectives, hospital staff, even the newborn baby. Every photograph was connected by red strings. Dates, notes, locations, appointments, phone records. It was a map of their lives. Someone had been tracking every member of the Blackwood family for decades. Daniel stepped closer. Pinned in the very center was a newspaper clipping. Its headline read, "Blackwood heir dies in tragic car accident. Date, 23 years ago." Ethan frowned. "I don't remember this." Laura read the article carefully. Then she looked at Ethan. "You wouldn't. It happened before your father died." Daniel leaned over her shoulder. "There was another son?" Laura nodded slowly. "The article says Richard Blackwood's eldest child died at age 12. Silence. Ethan shook his head. "No, I was the eldest. I've never had another brother." Laura handed him the article. "It says otherwise." Ethan read every word. The article described a boy named Nathan Blackwood. He had supposedly died in a car accident while returning from boarding school. Parents survived. Child killed instantly. Ethan looked at Daniel. "Do you remember Nathan?" Daniel answered immediately. "No." Margaret whispered from behind them. "You can't." Everyone turned. She had quietly followed them into the office. Tears filled her eyes. "Because Richard made sure neither of you remembered him." The room fell silent. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. "What are you saying?" Margaret took a shaky breath. "There were 3 brothers. You, Daniel, and Nathan." "No," Ethan whispered. "That's impossible." Margaret slowly shook her head. "No. The impossible part is that Nathan never died." Every face in the room froze. Laura spoke first. "If Nathan is alive, where has he been all these years?" Margaret looked toward the wall covered in photographs. Her voice broke. "Watching." She pointed at the smiling stranger who had appeared in every family picture. Then she whispered the words no one was prepared to hear. "That man is Nathan Blackwood." The room went completely silent. Ethan looked back at the photographs. The smile. The familiar eyes. For the first time, he noticed something he had somehow missed in every picture. The stranger wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking only at Ethan, as if he had spent 23 years waiting for this exact moment. The room fell silent. No one could process what Margaret had just said. Ethan looked from the photographs to the newspaper clipping, then back to Margaret. His voice was barely a whisper. "You're telling me that the man who's been watching my family for 23 years is my brother?" Margaret closed her eyes. "Yes." Daniel stepped back. "No. Our parents would have told us." "They couldn't," Margaret replied. "They were threatened." Detective Laura carefully unfolded another file pinned to the corkboard. Across the front were the words, "Project Legacy." Inside were dozens of handwritten notes. Some were signed by Richard Blackwood. Others weren't. Laura quickly scanned the first page. Her expression changed instantly. "Ethan, you need to read this." He took the folder. The first sentence stopped him cold. This was never about inheritance. It was about revenge. His eyes raced across the page. 23 years earlier, Richard Blackwood had made a decision that changed 3 lives forever. Nathan, his eldest son, had disappeared after witnessing a crime committed by one of Richard's most trusted business partners. Richard reported Nathan as dead, not because he had died, but because someone was trying to kill him. The only way to protect him was to erase him. A fake funeral, a fake death certificate, a new identity. Only Richard and Margaret knew the truth. Daniel looked stunned. So Nathan grew up believing his own family abandoned him? Margaret nodded slowly. He never knew why. He only knew that one day, his name disappeared. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "My father sacrificed one son to save him and destroyed the other 2 in the process." Detective Ross looked around the office. "If Nathan is alive, he was here recently." He pointed toward the warm coffee cup. "He can't be far." At that exact moment, the laptop on the desk came to life. Its screen flickered. A live video appeared. A man sat in a dimly lit room. His face was finally visible. Gray hair, blue eyes, the small scar beneath his left ear. The smiling stranger from every photograph. He looked directly into the camera. Then, he smiled. "Hello, Ethan." No one spoke. Nathan continued calmly. "If you're watching this, then you've found the truth." He glanced down briefly. "I never wanted your money. I never wanted Blackwood Holdings. I wanted one thing. The truth." He leaned closer to the camera. "Did you know what Father told me the night he sent me away?" Silence. Nathan answered his own question. He said, "One day your brothers will hate you." until they finally learn why I had to lose you. Nathan looked exhausted. Not angry, not bitter, just tired. I spent 23 years waiting for that day. He looked directly into Ethan's eyes. And now, the screen suddenly froze, then went black. Detective Laura immediately searched the desk. There has to be something else. Ross opened the bottom drawer. Inside was one final envelope. Unlike all the others, it was addressed to everyone. Laura unfolded the letter and began reading aloud. If you're hearing this, my family is finally together again. Not because you found me, but because you found the truth. Don't look for me. I've already left. I never wanted revenge. I only wanted you to stop blaming each other for a lie our father carried alone. The DNA report, the photographs, the missing will, every clue was meant to bring you here. Because this room was the only place where the whole truth could finally be seen. The letter was signed. Nathan. Ethan slowly lowered his head. For the first time in 2 days, he looked at Sophia. I'm sorry. His voice broke. I doubted you. Sophia took his hand. We both believed the evidence. But someone was asking us to believe people instead. Ethan looked down at his sleeping daughter, the child who had unknowingly brought every secret into the light. Detective Laura quietly smiled. The mystery wasn't who the baby's father was. It was who this family had forgotten. Months later, the Blackwood estate felt different. The surveillance room had been dismantled. The hidden cellar was sealed. Richard Blackwood's true will was eventually discovered beneath the library fireplace, exactly where he had hinted years before. It divided the family's fortune equally, including one final share, left in trust. For Nathan, no one knew where he was. No one knew if he would ever return. But every year, on the anniversary of Richard Blackwood's death, a single white lily appeared on the front steps of the mansion. No card, no signature, just one flower. A quiet reminder that some families are not destroyed by lies. They're destroyed by the truths that remain hidden for too long.